So good evening to you all. It's nice to be with you again. 2 weeks in a row now after abandoning you to go to Europe for a while. So let's start with the first question. I have been in an exclusive relationship since August of this year. We live 3 hours apart. We have wonderful times together. But then I get back home and out of the blue I get an email that says, I'm taking too much for granted because he thinks that I'm wanting the relationship to move faster than he is ready for. He asked for my thoughts about his observations. How do I respond to this? I feel like I'm on a roller coaster. I come home feeling great, and then after the email, I feel bad. I tell him I love him unconditionally, and it's freely given. It's like he won't let himself feel love. He says he loves me, and I know he really does. How do I respond to this roller coaster remarks? His wife died of cancer 5 years ago. So you're taking this personally. So when he says, gee, you're pushing me too fast, almost every time somebody speaks, and we get confused by the word you, which is understandable. It's a short word after all. You would think it would be clearly understood, but no, it's not. And so when people say to you, you do this, what they're really almost invariably saying is, I am afraid when this event occurs, and you just happen to be involved. So when he says that you're moving too fast, he's scared. So just the biggest step is recognizing that. Just that is a loving thing. My partner is frightened. So what do I do? What do I do to address my partner's fears instead of, as you're doing here, addressing yours and feeling frustrated and calling it a roller coaster? It's not a roller coaster. It's, pretty much been probably what it's been from the beginning. You're just recognizing now, or he's just recognizing better, his fears, and you have yet to recognize them. So, no big deal. And to recognize the truth about some of the other things you're saying. Like you said, I tell him I love him unconditionally. Well, if, he has a little burp of fear and you go into a tizzy, you're not unconditionally loving him. You're thinking about yourself and the effect on you. No criticism here, just the way it is. And we only really can change anything or be happier when we start off with a basis of truth. And then you say, and I know that, how'd you say it? I know that he says he loves me and I know he really does. That's very unlikely. If he's scared because the relationship's going too fast, people who are in fear are not capable of unconditionally loving. So the real truth is, you don't know how to love him unconditionally. You may be learning. I'm sure you want to. I'm sure you're doing your best to. But you don't know how quite, and he doesn't know how quite. And so with a long history of trading imitation love and not knowing what unconditional love is like, you're coming along and saying, well, let's move forward in this unconditional love relationship. And he's going, I don't even know what you're talking about. He's confused. He's like, freaking out. Do what? Because all he can picture is what he's known before, which is that it's really fun in the beginning and you have a great time trading, but then eventually that runs out and then he's going to be left doomed again. He's going to be left feeling empty and betrayed and disappointed and irritated. And so he's already looking ahead going, man, do I really want to get into that again? Do I want to feel the pain of all that? So recognize that about him, that he's afraid, and ask him, so what are you afraid of? Now, keep in mind that when you ask somebody who's afraid, what are you afraid of? Most of the time, that's like asking a kid who's just broken something or done something wrong, why did you do that? He's not going to have the slightest idea. Most likely. Now, if he can identify it, great. If not, you might help him. You might say, well, it would be pretty natural, having not done a relationship like this before, based on a principle you're just learning, that this would make you nervous. or having experienced disappointments in relationships before, it's understandable that you would be cautious about re-experiencing the same disappointments. So, sure, I understand you being afraid. Just your understanding him will be huge. So you can't go in there feeling nervous and like you're on a roller coaster, or you're going to convey your fear to him. And now we have fear, his fear, your fear. Fear plus fear equals you're dead. So you first have to work through this yourself. And if that means you have to talk to some real love people until you don't feel afraid, till you really understand this, do that. And then you can even ask him what there is about what you do that contributes to that fear. You may be pushing him in ways that you don't know. For example, you say, I know that I'm loving him unconditionally, and it's freely given. That's not likely. You may be the one perfect person that, I haven't met yet, but probably not. And so ask him, are there things that I do that contribute to your fears? Which doesn't mean that you cause his fears. He brought them with him. But at least you can find out that you may be doing some stuff you're not aware of. I was talking to a lady just the other day, and as she was talking to her husband, at one point I said, you probably don't realize this, but when you speak to him, you're using that tone. And, her first impulse was to look at me and go, what do you mean, that tone? The one you're using right now with me. That one. Would you want me to record it for you? And just with a few more seconds of explanation, acceptance, she said, yeah, you're not the first person to tell me I have that tone. Yeah. Well, okay. So just see it. And so you're asking him to tell you a little bit more about what you might be doing that you don't see. And then, now that you recognize the fears, what are you going to do about it? You can't say to him, oh, well, gosh, don't be afraid, because I will just love you unconditionally. No, probably you won't. And you certainly can't just tell him not to be afraid. So it's like, what are our next steps? Would you like to have a more loving relationship that doesn't feel risky, but that we just kind of grow into together? Ask him if he wants to. What if he says, nah, I just like having sex with you and sending you home. And then after you've gotten home, well, then I write you and I say we're moving too fast, which is pretty common, by the way. Ask him if he'd like to move forward in a safer but still growing mutually loving relationship. And if so, then read. You're probably a little far along. If you've been in a relationship, let's see, September, October, more than 2 months. And if you're older than, 22, and if his wife died 5 years ago, sounds like you are, probably a little past the real love and dating. Probably. It's worth looking at, but you might want to read the Real Love and Marriage book together. As you do that, the two of you will learn a lot about each other, because as you read, you say, I do that. The thing that, Fred is doing there on page 55, I do that with you. Or I have done that in past relationships. So, glorious opportunity for the two of you to tell the truth about each other. But you need to actually work through this. You need to work to move forward, to grow, rather than just, silly phrases like, we're moving too fast, so we'll just slow down. Well, that's absurd. I mean, that's like saying, I'll be stupid slower. What good's that? No, you need to actually do something substantively different. Or, I just need my space. So you can now be stupid by yourself. No, we actually have to do something different. And you will have to propose this, because it sounds like you know more about real love, and so you may have to be, more the pioneer, the leader, the example. But, yeah, whatever. And then you're going to learn some things. As you read the book together, you're going to either learn a whole lot about each other and grow closer, or you'll grow apart. Great. Either way, you're moving. If you move apart, you learn that this isn't the person that you want to have a real love relationship with. If he says, I don't want to read no dang book. What does that tell you? He's not really interested in a productive, growing relationship. So again, you win. So don't sit still. Take some steps forward and you'll learn a lot. Here's a viewer who says, on your last video chat, you mentioned how people use their outgoing personality, intellect, charm, and so on to trade imitation love with each other. I see myself as outgoing. I believe that I'm intelligent and that I like to play and have fun. So, how do I know if I'm trading when I'm being outgoing? How do I know when I'm just being myself? Can you help me see if I've set some traps for myself? You know, in the moment that you're being outgoing, right in the moment, we can trick ourselves like completely. I can't count how many times in my life I have been just outgoing, clever, witty, helpful, knowledgeable, whatever, and thought that I was just being myself. And it took experience and critical self-observation. When I say critical, I don't mean like mean criticism. I mean clean dissection, a willingness to observe a thing dispassionately as a third person, to observe my behavior and then realize, I was attached to what I was doing. So the difference between simply being myself and trading is that when I'm trading, I want something in return. So let's say that I'm being witty, clever, outgoing, whatever it is you're talking about here, strikingly handsome like myself, or whatever. If you offer that to people and then afterward you feel some sense of like disappointment that people didn't respond in the way you wanted, then you weren't just being yourself. You were manipulating people. If it's exhausting, that's another clue that you're not just being yourself. People use this phrase all the time. Well, I was trying to be nice. Then you weren't being. You weren't being nice. If you were working at it, then it was a big effort on your part, and almost certainly 99+% of the time, you were looking for some kind of reward. You wanted people to be nice in return. You wanted them to be grateful to you. You wanted them to appreciate you. And that's true with all these traits that you just named. If I can be with a bunch of people and be whatever all those things are and experience no exhaustion, no tension, no fear, these are other clues. Fears that what I am is not enough. Disappointment that they don't respond sufficiently to me, that people don't like me. All of these things are the clues that you're not just being yourself. Fear, exhaustion, disappointment, irritation. Just watch for those. And you don't have to be all anxious about it. Oh my gosh, am I going to be myself? No, relax. Just as you interact with people, pause occasionally and notice where you are. And then afterward, especially notice where you are, whether you were posturing or whatever. You know, still to this day, every once in a while, I'll have an interaction with somebody, and then I'll realize afterward, I was feeling tense. I was feeling like, well, what if they don't get what now, of course, I'm clever to myself, clever ways to trick myself, and I'll say, well, I was just worried that I wouldn't get the message across. A little more honest reflection reveals that I was a little worried that I wouldn't be accepted while I was getting the message across, too. So you just keep asking yourself those questions. And if you're willing to, wow, you'll see this stuff. And you don't have to even give it up. Just keep seeing it. And bit by bit, you'll stop pretending. It's very fun. Even though the first few times are pretty scary. Because the very first time that you say, whoa, what a manipulative traitor I am. It's a hard thing to say. Hard thing to hear. We have a question. I have been away from my girl for about a month. She has a lot of anger, yells, screams, and so on. I assume my girl means my girlfriend, as opposed to my little girl. She had childhood sexual abuse, and it probably has a lot to do with it. After 5 years together, I just can't seem to bounce back from it anymore. I feel abused myself. I like her a lot, a part of her, and would just like some advice as to how to go from here in resolving past issues and trying to make a better relationship. Should I stay away? Talk on the phone, email. She's on Adderall and somewhat hooked on opiates. Should I ask her to fight the addiction, or is it justified? Any advice would be appreciated. Well, so here you've got somebody who is terrified, a victim of sexual abuse, and it is a very fond habit of those who have been hurt in a way that elicits social sympathy. It's very common for people who have been, where a member of their family's been killed, where they've been sexually abused, where a hurricane has knocked down their house. It's very common for people of certain classes of injury to milk that for everything it's worth. Now, does that mean that they weren't injured? Oh, no. So don't hear in this that I'm minimizing their pain. Oh, please. Pain is pain. But people who've been injured in certain socially evocative ways tend to then become victims the rest of their lives. And for the rest of their lives say, oh, well, it's just because I was sexually abused. It's just because my father was an alcoholic. It's because my brother committed suicide. And the reason, I completely get why. Because if we're empty, sympathy feels wonderful. But it's too easy. And so then it becomes an excuse for all of our protecting, all of our whining, complaining, crying, inaction, all of that stuff. The truth is that the singular wound on the planet is not feeling loved. It's the worst thing. So it doesn't really matter how we got that wound, whether we were sexually abused, hit, shoved in a closet, or just ignored. That's all it takes. Any of those things will convince a child that they're not loved, and that's just horrific. So she's empty. She's filling her emptiness with sympathy by saying, oh, look what happened to me years ago. She's also numbing her pain now with both a stimulant and a depressant at the same time. So here she's using a version of amphetamines and is also using an opiate, which is, a narcotic and a depressant. She's in a mess. At some point, if she wants to get better, she is going to have to face her behavior. So you don't say to her, okay, here's what you have to do. But what I would say is, sweetie, Susie, I'm concerned because you are so unhappy. And she may or may not argue with you. Some people do. Oh, I'm fine. Okay, well, I wasn't really asking you. This is me playing your part. I wasn't really asking you if you're happy. You're not. You're hooked on drugs. You complain. You're bitter. You're angry. You have volatile moods. And so all I'm saying is, if you want your life to change, it is not going to change when everybody else around you becomes different. Which is what victims tend to say. Well, it's because of this person and that event and that thing. And, well, good luck, honey, changing all the world around you. It's never going to happen. So, do you want to be happier? Most people will say, well, yeah, sure. Well, then you have to do something. You have to be willing to examine your choices. You have to be willing to tell the truth about yourself to some people. You have to be willing to look at some principles that are dramatically different than the ones that presently guide your perception of the world, which is really awful because it's not working. So if you're interested, I would suggest to you, and then you offer her the DVDs, the books, the conference calls, the whatever. And if she says, well, no, I don't really need that. So listen carefully to me. Leave her. Leave her right now, today. Because you've been with her for 5 years. You're not married to her. And if she's still screaming, yelling, complaining about her sexual abuse and popping pills, why would you stay in that? Sure, she needs help, yes, but you're not a drug dependency center. You're not a certified counselor. You're not an addiction inpatient facility. So the likelihood that you're going to be able to help her with these rather serious problems is almost nothing. And if you hang on to her, then you're suffering with the illusion that somehow you're there to fix people. And or to somehow balance the scales of pain and injustice in the world. It's not going to happen. So if she's willing to change, then you can take her by the hand and lead her to conference calls, a coach. I mean, she sounds, not well enough that I'd go well past just attending conference calls. She needs a coach, just at minimum. If not, to go all the way, and that is go to a place where she can sit with a real love coach for like several days in a row, all day long. Half measures, we just keep doing them. We sink ourselves all the way down into a hole, and then we try little half measures. So, we keep leaping halfway across the canyon, and all we get is the bottom and injured. So I would suggest she get a lot of help, a lot. And if she's not willing to do that, why stay and sink yourself? It sounds mean. Not mean at all. If she's not going to get better and you stay with her, you're going to lose too. If she's willing to, maybe there's a resurrection or a resurrection of the relationship that's possible. Actually, it's not even resurrected because it was never there to start with. Here's a viewer that says, my husband has a pornography addiction. And we've heard this question a bunch of times. Well, at least the beginning. We've had our ups and downs in sharing this kind of information with each other. Several months ago, he shared that he was struggling again with his addiction, and our conversation went well. And this was the same time as he began learning about real love. As a spouse of an addict, what information should I be informed of, or what questions can I ask him about? Is it okay several times a year to ask him how he's doing with it? It's okay to ask him every week how he's doing with it. If the two of you are in a mutually loving relationship, or at least headed toward that, then you would care enough about him to ask him if he's still involved with something that's destroying him. And so you have to be really clear that when you do ask him about it, couples should be having meetings every day or every other day. If not, the relationship tends to go backwards. So in your meetings, at least once a week, you ought to be saying, so how's it going with the addiction? And you're just asking for how he's doing, as opposed to how we usually ask such questions. So, are you still doing that? You do that, he's more likely to use, and he's more likely to lie to you by, oh, wow, a lot. I would also suggest that if he's struggling with this addiction, most people really cannot handle this kind of addiction by themselves. They can't do it. Can't. It's not won't. Women tend to look at their husbands and go, why can't he control himself? It's no different than being a coke addict or an addict to anger, as you are, indicating that you are just by asking the question with that tone of voice. So we're all addicted to something. This just happens to be the way he expresses his pain and treats his pain. Doesn't work, but it's all he's got. It's all he knows about. I mean, he could be out killing people, which isn't to justify what he's doing. But you need to be talking about this on a regular basis, every week in the beginning, then maybe eventually every month. But you should be able to just openly talk about it like you would talk about, when you went to Walmart, did you pick up a gallon of milk? It should be that easy and that open. Now, in addition, this was kind of a long little parenthetical rant. Just a few moments ago, I was saying we can't handle this by ourselves. So he needs your help. but it's also enormously beneficial for porn addicts, in this case a man porn addict, to be able to talk to other men. Most men have never had a confidant, ever. Little girls talk to each other all the time, but guys don't do that. And so they don't know how to talk about that. Guys will tell jokes about porn. They'll tell jokes about masturbation. They'll make hand signals indicating masturbation freely. See them on television all the time. But actually talk about a problem with either of those two issues? Nah. Guys aren't going to talk about it. They're ashamed. So I would suggest that you recommend to your partner, husband, that he find a man or two, either through the conference calls on the website or whatever means he's got available to him, that he find somebody that he can freely share how he's doing. That's the essence of the success of AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, for example, is that people have somebody to talk to, somebody to share their life with. We all need that. So, yeah, it's a real problem, this porn addiction. It's huge. It's everywhere. 70% of men use porn in a regular way. That's just in this country. In some countries, it's 80, 90%. And so, very common addiction, and we're not talking about it nearly enough. So, great question. Thanks for it. Here's somebody who says, my boyfriend had not proposed, back up. My boyfriend hadn't planned on proposing this weekend, so he didn't have a ring yet. But then he did propose. And now I'm wondering, if he doesn't talk about a ring this weekend, do I bring it up or stay quiet? He said it's okay for me to tell people that we're engaged, and he's telling people too, but I don't feel like it's real without a ring. So how do I handle this? Well, if the man is telling other people that you're engaged, then in his mind, honey, he's engaged. That's pretty committed. And so, that's the real indication of his commitment to you. But if you need that kind of really socially accepted way of demonstrating the commitment, then at some point you just say to him in a really calm way, oh, honey, I'm so looking forward to being married to you. I'm wondering, at what point, where are we with talking about a ring? Just ask him. Just straight out. Not, well, how come I don't have a ring yet? That will not go well. But just ask him where you are with that. That in our society, that's pretty much the first thing people ask you. I'm engaged. Now, guys don't do this. I'd fall over if I ever heard a guy say this. But when you tell other women this, it's the first thing they say. Oh, let me see your ring. And if you don't have one, then most women that I know would then conclude that, well, so you're kind of not really engaged then, huh? And the guy that asked you is really kind of a cheapskate and a loser. That's just kind of the assumption made. And so it's perfectly reasonable to ask him where he is with that. Just don't pressure him about it. Just ask. We make such a big thing out of almost everything before we ask a simple question. This viewer says, my husband and I just passed our 1-year anniversary mark. And then it says, comma, surprisingly. So it must have been a tough year, huh? Then you continue. It's been one of the toughest years of my life. Yeah. Seeing myself as I truly have been for my entire life. I've been a victim. I've been blaming, manipulative, controlling, angry, just to name a few. And my husband told me about 6 months into our marriage that he wanted a divorce. And so that was when I realized that a lot of changes needed to happen in me and not just everybody around me. That's how I found the Real Love books, and now I'm on a conference call too. Although I haven't yet called anybody one-on-one. So why haven't you? Because you're afraid. And if you are 12 months into a marriage that was dissolving after 6 months. Well, honey, this is like I was talking about before. Half measures just, aren't going to cut it. So, if the car's moving along 70 miles an hour in the wrong direction, you're probably not going to change the direction of the car, bring it to a stop by putting your hand out, the window to catch a little air. And that's kind of what it's like if you just read books. You have to feel more loved. Conference calls, good. You'll learn a lot on that. But one-on-one, you need to feel what it's like to have somebody just pour out their acceptance on you while you're being, in your words, a victim, blaming, manipulative, controlling, angry, and so on. You need to feel what it's like to be loved while you're doing all those things. And that only happens with, personal interaction with phone calls. So I'd say, get a move on, honey. If you want to help you and your relationship, it's just going to require a little bit more effort than you're already putting into it. Then you continue. My husband looked up one of his exes, I assume you mean ex-girlfriend, on my laptop, and I found this out because I was standing behind him when her name popped up several times. He told me that he was just curious, to gather some information. And I just went numb inside and sat down. I told him that I realize I have no control over what he chooses to do, but that if he felt truly loved and valued by me, that he would not have the desire to look up his past and try to connect with old girlfriends. I told him I'd done the same thing when I was with a boyfriend in the past and looked up some of my exes, hoping that it would make me feel less empty and alone so I could relate to where he was coming from. Good for you, as opposed to going crazy and saying, how could you do this to me? So it's wonderful that at least you understand why he's doing this, and you said it just beautifully. He's not feeling loved, and so he hasn't felt love for his whole lifetime. Now he's clearly not feeling loved by you for reasons you've already detailed. And so he's going to look for love in, like the song says, all the wrong places. So it's good that you understand him. But now we're back to what I mentioned earlier, which is now you have to build a relationship. Good to get it, what's happening, but you have to get more loved yourself so you have something to give him. Otherwise, when he does things like this, even though you express understanding, the pain is going to be all over your face too. And then as you're studying real love, share with him what you're learning. He may not be interested in reading any of the books in the beginning. Many partners are not. But you can say, well, could we spend a half an hour together tonight? And do that on a regular basis, which, by the way, is way easier to hear for most people than, okay, I want to spend a half an hour together every night. I want you to commit to that. Oh, most people feel trapped. So instead, you just, each day, say, could we talk tomorrow at 7:30? So each day you set something up for the next day, as opposed to, I want half an hour of your time at 8:30 for the rest of your life. It just seems so non-spontaneous to some people. Others would love that, but not everybody. And then, even if he's not interested in reading, share with him what you are learning. So here you're reading the Real Love and Marriage book, and you're reading about victimhood and selfishness. And so you say, I was reading in this book about the damage that's done in relationships when somebody acts like a victim and they get angry and they're selfish. I do that with you. So he may not read, but if you keep telling him the truth about yourself and you're increasingly loving with him, darling, at some point, the odds are 90+% that he's going to say, what's happened to you? What are you taking? And then you get to say, well, I've been reading this book, and I'd kind of like to read it with you, if that's okay. And if he's already seen a difference in you, pretty high likelihood that he'd be willing to. You can make it easy and say, I'll read to you out loud. So then you continue. My problem is that even after I caught him looking up this girl, he went back online and paid some search company to find out more information about her. Yeah, because, you expressed a little understanding of him. Good. But you still have a relatively empty relationship. You are still relatively empty. So, he likes hearing your words, but he wants to feel loved, and you're going to have to feel more love before you can give that to him. So the next step is you just make more phone calls, you be more honest, you expose yourself to opportunities to get love so you can give him something. So of course he's doing this. Not that that's okay, just I get it. I'm not sure how to have this conversation with him. I don't want to do it like I would have done it in the past and said, how can you do this to me? I don't want to do that anymore. So I'm going to tell him that I know that he researched her even further, and that I learned that when I saw a check that he'd written in his checkbook. And I'll tell him that, if he truly felt loved or valued by me or anybody else, he wouldn't be looking for an ex. Again, good understanding. Simply outstanding, my dear. And now he needs the real thing. He needs to feel loved by you. And your understanding is one element of real love. He just needs more of it, as do you. Part of me really wants to ask him if he just needs to be out of this marriage. Oh, don't do that. I mean, here you guys are early in your relationship, a year, I think. And so, when somebody's in pain, you don't say, so, do you just want out? Gee, honey, what do you think he's going to say? You just increase the odds of him going, that's a really great idea. I mean, if I park a truck on your foot and I say, would you like me to move it? Yeah. So instead of going that direction, just tell him what you're learning, like we talked about. Be loving to him. Share with him your mistakes. See him and what he needs instead of you and your pain. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to ignore your pain. Talk about it, but that's what you're going to be doing with individual friends, on conference calls, by phone, by email, whatever means you've got available to you, so that these friends will fill you up. And it'll make a huge difference to both of you. My 24-year-old daughter, new, different viewer, called me to share that after doing a 10-day fast, her bulimia behavior has returned. She hadn't done this in 3 years. She asked me for the conference call phone number. She doesn't want to tell her housemates because she's afraid. I encouraged her to tell as many wise people that she could. I confirmed that the fast probably exacerbated the bulimia. Should I call her more often to see how she's doing? Well, ask her. Say, sweetie, I completely understand why you would do this. That eliminates half of her fears right off. When we feel empty, afraid, alone, in pain, we'll do any number of things to get a sense of relief from that pain. And crazy as that is to people who like to eat, people who are anorexic and bulimic get a real sense of control over their environment, a real sense of control over themselves. It's a kind of strange sense of power when they're able to utterly control what they eat and what their bodies look like. So tell her that you understand what it comes from. It's all about emptiness. And that if she wants to do something about it, the more she talks about it without feeling criticized, the less need she'll have to do it. And my goodness, I've seen this over and over again. Then you say to her, so only because my interest is in helping you to be happy, because after all, your emptiness is almost certainly because of me, would it be okay with you if every week or so I asked you how you were doing? Not so you have to give a report, but because it gives you an opportunity to tell the truth about yourself and feel loved by me. That's all. And it gives you an opportunity to be accountable, just to be responsible for your own behavior. You're not going to be punished, not going to be criticized. But when we suffer addictions alone, that aloneness tends to make them worse. People just don't tend to do well dealing with their addictions by themselves. And so that's what you say to her. And I'd be glad to help if that's something that's agreeable to you. And if it's not, I'll butt out. And when you say it that way, the odds are much higher that she'll want your help. Here's a viewer who says, I'm having a situation at work. First, let me say that I'm overwhelmed with many new responsibilities, and I'm relatively empty as a result. A woman I'm now working with more closely has attacked me about 4 different times now. Yesterday, she began lecturing me and lecturing and lecturing about the disposal of old documentation. Geez, I finally just ran away while she was attacking because I couldn't figure out how to get her to stop. She is not my supervisor. I know she's empty too, and knowing that doesn't help while she's dragging me under. So when we're loving, that doesn't mean that we have to endure, tolerate, accept every behavior from everybody else. When, as you're growing in your ability to unconditionally love, you'll discover when you're reaching your limits of your ability to love. So don't wait until you're dead. Don't wait till you're 6 feet under the water. As soon as you can begin to feel yourself start to sink, do something right then. See, we feel like, well, if somebody's lecturing us, then we have to just sit and take it. That's just silly. Well, I would hate to offend her. And often we just don't know the words to say. So don't wait until you're too empty. If you wait too long, your reaction will be bad. So the idea is, love people as much as you can, and as you begin to feel that drain, stop. Get out. Stop the behavior. Stop you. Now, it's almost always about stopping you. It's stopping what you are doing. Because you're sitting there, and although it looks passive, you're making a choice to stand there and take this. And if it's becoming too much, you don't regard it as her abusing you. No, she's just being herself. You just happen to be, the closest person near her for her to exhibit her behavior with. And so it's a fairly unmistakable sign. As she's talking, put your hand up and say, so what you're telling me is that you would like me to dispose of old documentation this way. Shred it, burn it, eat it, whatever. Have I got that? You say that really early on. Repeat what she's saying. Now, have I heard you? And then when the other person says, well, yes, then you say, great, I've got it. And thanks for telling me. And then you leave. And if that means if you're not full enough to hear more than 5 seconds of that, then you still do that. So you're just reminding me about the documentation. How long did that take me? 6 seconds? Less? And so I've got it. And I'll let you know if there's anything that's unclear. See? And I made it all about me. Do I have it? Do I understand? I'll let you know if it's unclear. As opposed to saying, I hate it that you are a lecturing witch about something that just bores me to tears. Not likely to go well after that. So stick with talking about you and stop it sooner. Don't wait till you're in pain, honey. We usually can't deal with it when it gets that bad. This is from the same woman who just told us that she'd gotten engaged and didn't have a ring. And you say, he was receptive to Greg's book and workbook. He says he's into pleasing me, that he tells me yes to things too quick, and then takes it back and says that he needs more time. He's really scared. It's so hard on me when he says one thing, then takes it back or delays it. What can I say to assure? He interprets it that I'm wanting things to move faster along. For example, he said, let's get married in December. And then today he says he needs more time. And now it's February 26th, which is fine with me. How can I help him with his fears? He's been widowed for 5 years. He tells me to sell my house and now called and said, wait, said that he'd freak out if I showed up with a truck to move in. I told him fine, very afraid. And so, like you just said here, it's so hard on me. See, we don't mean to do this stuff, but we do it. You say it's so hard on me when he says one thing and then takes it back or delays it. Well, actually, this is such a common behavior. It's like the common cold. It's everywhere. Like tooth decay. We're so afraid of not pleasing people. And some of us deal with it by drinking, and some of us deal with it by looking perfect all the time, and some of us deal with it by lying, saying what people want to, what we think that they want to hear. So you tell him, sweetie, just tell me what you really want, and that will be fine. Now, this is going to be hard for you, because you just said when he changes his mind, it is, quote, hard on you, which means you get disappointed, frustrated, and possibly even irritated. He feels that, honey. And so when he feels your disappointment, what do you think he's going to do when you say, well, would you like to get engaged or married in December? And when you say it all, would you like it? What you're really saying is, I would really like it if you like it. And so the poor schmuck just feels pushed, and he goes, okay. And then later on, when he's not feeling so pushed, he's going, that's not what I wanted to say. And so we end up pushing people not only by being disappointed when they don't do what we want, but we push people by showing our obvious inclination. We show them our preference. We say, now it's okay to have a preference, but with somebody who's a people pleaser, and then you push him a little bit to do a thing, or he says, well, let's see, when should we get married? Let's see, we could February, could be January, and you're going, or we could just get married in December, and then you go, yes, like he finally hit the right multiple choice, question or answer. You'll find that you indicate in a number of ways to him what you want him to do. Well, then he does it. Then later he regrets it. So I would just suggest that you look more rigorously at the ways you express your preferences to him, and almost certainly manipulating it, because you've proven right here that you do, by saying that then when he doesn't do what you want, it's hard on you, which implies that somehow it's his fault. When I say, it was hard on me, well, that's not my fault, is it? No, it's it. Whatever it was hard on me. As opposed to, when that happened, I wasn't loving enough, and so I got annoyed. I was disappointed. I had an expectation of an outcome. But people don't say that. They do the it was hard on me thing. So you're kind of leaning on him and blaming him, and so he is responding accordingly. And so the obvious question is, and somebody's asking it here, how do you deal with a people pleaser? You have to have no expectations. None. You say, well, I've heard this over and over. I don't. Oh, I don't have any expectations in my relationship. And then when we don't get what we want, we're disappointed. We go. For a people pleaser, you just will stab them. It has that kind of impact on them. So you have to not only have no expectations and no disappointment, which means you're going to have to get filled up. You have to talk about it all the time. So, sweetie, here's what I would like. What would you like to do? And what you would like to do is every bit as important as what I would like to do. You don't have to want to do anything I want. We're trying to figure out who we is. And this is me talking to a people pleaser. I don't want to marry another me. I don't need another me around. I don't need a mini me. Boring. I wouldn't want to be married to Greg. And so what we say is, well, I want to find a partner. Well, most of the time what we mean is we want to find somebody who's just like us. You really don't want that wish. You don't. You don't like yourself that much. We want somebody who complements us with two E's, not complement. Somebody who's fills in the gaps for who we're not. Somebody who's different. Somebody who adds to who we are and makes us greater, fuller, exponentially more fun. So I would want somebody different from me. So then I married Donna, who was really different from me in a lot of ways, and it was kind of unavoidable. There would be times when I'm going, well, why don't you do it my way? And although she didn't have quite the straightforwardness to say it in the beginning, she does now, but her answers really boiled down to, because I'm not you. Because I'm an adult that who makes her own decisions. Well, Yeah, and that's what we have to communicate to people pleasers, because they've never gotten that. That's why they're people pleasers. All their lives, people have leaned on them to do things their way, and so the people pleaser leaps into the gap and goes, let it be me. Well, it sure makes people smile, but it sure leaves the people pleaser feeling like a hostage to everybody around them. So lots of talking and practice and being open about your own expectations and so on before a people pleaser will quit. Here's somebody who says, a people pleaser can't say what they want. If they can't ever say it, then how do you ever get to a middle? Oh, well, for one thing, it's not usually a middle. When Donna and I talk about a thing, it's not like I want one thing, she wants another, and we find the happy medium. It's usually that it matters more to one person. And so very often, if it matters more to her, I just go, I'll be happy either way. What do I care? I'm with you, so if this particular thing matters more to you, we'll do that thing. It's like two people living on opposite sides of a canyon. What are we going to do? Meet halfway and live there? Not likely. But you're right that people pleasers will often not even be able to tell you their opinion, because they'll say, oh, whatever you want. So, what movie would you like to go to? I don't care. Where would you like to go to eat? Whatever you choose is okay with me. They're terrified of making a mistake. So they won't even stick their neck out. They won't even put their foot in the ring. They just let you make all the decisions. Now, that doesn't keep people pleasers from, after you've made your choice, criticizing yours. But they don't want to take a risk. And so with a people pleaser, it's really fairly important to say, I really want to know what you want to do here. Well, anything's fine. So train them and say, all right, so when it comes to restaurants, let me name you 3. There's no way, none, that you have an equal opinion about all 3 restaurants. So which one do you like least? Well, they can almost always pick something they like least. Well, I don't like Mexican. Great. Well, here are the 2 that are left. And so on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate this one? And then how about this one? Teach them to have an opinion, and then show them you really care about their opinion. So for a people pleaser, at least for a while, it would be important to say, we're going to do whatever you choose to do. Because if you're not a people pleaser, that's not your problem. With everybody, it's a different approach. And so you say to them, I will sit here for as long as it takes, but not irritated. Not like you have to make a choice. No, but because I really want to know what matters to you. And I can't learn that until you make choices. So relax. It's not going to be a wrong choice. I just want to know what it is. They do need help. You're right. In many respects, they are kind of like decision cripples. Here's somebody who says, my brother says that he slept with my ex-wife. Of course, it would make me wonder if he slept with your ex-wife while you were still married to her, or he slept with her like after you were divorced. Just wondering. How do I not feel unsure about the next woman that I'm with when that thought crosses my mind? Do you think it's true, or do people make things like that up? Oh, frankly, who cares? It's your ex-wife. That's over. Some people, I have known people to make up things like that just to be hurtful, or to brag. Well, I slept with your ex-wife. Or to say it in a way just to be mean-spirited. But, in the end, do you really care? You were saying, because all that really matters is now. So, how do I not feel unsure about the next woman? Oh, that's easy. Because this isn't about your brother and your ex-wife. Who's it about? It's about you. What kind of relationship would you have had to be in where you would even wonder whether your ex-wife slept with your brother? Couldn't have been that great, could it? Oh, and then here's the explanation. Yeah, it was while I was still married. All right, so he did. So he slept with your ex-wife. You have a piece of information about the past. It's like me learning a piece of interesting information about Valley Forge. Done. I mean, what are you going to do? Call up your ex-wife and say, "Oh, how could you do that to me?" Where do you think that conversation is going to go? She's not your wife anymore. And what are you going to do? Tell your brother, "Well, I'm really mad about something that you did years ago." We already know why he did it. He was empty and alone and was looking for some sort of imitation love. So boring. We got the why. No, the real thing is, what are you going to do now? So you want to fill your life so much with truth-telling, openness, unconditional love, that A, you will attract an unconditionally loving woman into your life, and then B, you will have a mutually fulfilling, richly rewarding relationship with her. And if you're having that, what are the odds that she's going to cheat on you with your brother? 0. Whereas if you don't have a loving relationship and you don't know how to choose a loving partner, what good's it going to do to be suspicious? You could build a wall around this woman and she'd find a way out and she'd be cheating on you. So really the issue is not all that past stuff, and it's not what it's you. Learn to be loving. And then you don't have any fears. None. I travel all over the world and I'm with women all the time, and Donna doesn't go, "Ooh, oh, I wonder what he's doing." Why? Because such a thing would be unthinkable. It doesn't make sense. And she knows that. It's all about the love that we have. So trying to prevent a thing with the traditional security measures, good luck with that. Here's we don't have time for one more question. So I'll save that for next time. Delightful. As usual, you guys were hot tonight. So we'll meet again next Tuesday. And I encourage you to send me your questions at greg@reallove.com. It's your questions that make this. It's not me. So keep it up. These were just delightful. And I look forward to seeing you next Tuesday. And between now and then, the answer is always about real love. See you then. Bye.